From claims of Nolan Wells attending a pool party to reports of a fight, there is a lot of back and forth about the final moments of this teen football player who died over the July 4th weekend. We are sorting through the latest developments.
Well, we could soon know more about what led to the death of 18-year-old Nolan Wells. Results from an independent autopsy are expected to be back.
Both autopsies are done. Results are still being held back. Attorney Ben Crump says the family won't release them until after Monday's funeral. So here's exactly what's confirmed right now, why they're waiting, and the moment those results are expected to drop. No guessing, no rumors, just the real status. Here's the short version if you're new to this. Nolan Wells was 18. A football player at Southwest Mississippi Community College, fresh out of Ocean Springs High School. On July 4th, he took a boat trip out to Horn Island with a group of friends, a barrier island off the Mississippi Gulf Coast, about 10 miles offshore. No cell towers out there, no park rangers stationed year-round. The only way on or off is by boat. His friends came back that afternoon. Nolan didn't. He was last seen on the beach around 3 p.m. His friends said he'd told them he'd get a ride home a different way. His mother reported him missing that night. 2 days later, a park ranger found his body in the water, just off the island. The sheriff's office says they suspect drowning. They also say they don't currently suspect foul play, but that's not a confirmed cause of death. Nobody has officially said what happened to Nolan Wells. Not yet. And here's the detail that's kept this case alive for weeks. Some witnesses who were on that island will only talk to the family's own investigators, not the sheriff's department, not police, just the family. Since then, civil rights attorney Ben Crump has taken the case. The FBI is now assisting. A grand jury is coming, eventually, and 2 separate autopsies, one from the state, one commissioned independently by the family, have both been completed. That's where things stood, right up until the question everyone's asking now. What do those autopsy results actually say? That's what we're getting into. Real quick, before we keep going, if this is helping you actually understand what's happening in this case, instead of just doom-scrolling comments and TikTok theories, hit like and subscribe. I know everyone says that, but here's the honest truth about how this works. The algorithm decides who sees this video next based almost entirely on how many people engage with it early on. More likes, more subscribes means this reaches more people who are also looking for real answers instead of speculation. It takes 2 seconds. It genuinely makes a difference. Okay, back to the autopsy. Let's get into the actual answer. As of right now, both autopsies are done. The state autopsy, conducted by the Mississippi State Medical Examiner's Office, and the independent autopsy, commissioned separately by the Wells family. Both finished, both sitting complete right now as you're watching this. But completed doesn't mean released. It doesn't mean cause of death has been announced. Based on what the family's own attorney has said, it doesn't even mean the family themselves currently knows what those autopsies found. So how did we get here? Let's walk it. Nolan's body was found the morning of July 6th. There were no obvious signs of trauma on the body itself, nothing that made foul play immediately clear one way or the other. So the coroner did the responsible thing, ordered a full state autopsy to check for anything that couldn't be seen on the surface. That should have been enough, but the family didn't wait on it. Through attorney Ben Crump, they commissioned a second, fully independent autopsy of their own, a step Crump said they took because of what he called a lack of information coming from investigators up to that point. They wanted answers they controlled, not answers they had to wait to be handed. That independent autopsy was originally expected back by Friday, July 10th. That date came and went. Crump cited issues transporting Nolan's body for the review. It took longer than planned. But as of the most recent reporting, both autopsies are now finished. What's still outstanding is toxicology. That's the one piece holding everything back, and it's the single biggest source of frustration in the comments on every video covering this case. Here's the headline to take with you into the next part. This isn't a case where nobody's done the work. The work is done. What's missing is the release, and increasingly, that release looks tied to something else entirely, something happening in 3 days. We'll get to that. Here's the part almost nobody explains clearly, and it's the reason this wait feels so much longer than it should. An autopsy itself, the physical examination, usually wraps up in a day, maybe 2. That part's fast. What takes weeks isn't the autopsy, it's what happens after, toxicology. Toxicology testing isn't done in-house at most medical examiners' offices. Samples get sent out to specialized outside labs, the kind of labs that run screens for hundreds of substances at a level of precision a local office simply isn't equipped to do. And those labs aren't just running one case, they're processing a backlog from jurisdictions across the entire region. One forensic expert put it plainly: toxicology alone can take 2, sometimes 3 weeks, and that's normal. That's not this case being mishandled. That's just how the system works in almost every death investigation involving toxicology anywhere in the country. So when you see people online saying the delay itself is suspicious, that's usually where they're wrong. A 3-week toxicology wait isn't a red flag, it's the baseline. What actually matters is what happens once that testing comes back, and specifically whether the findings get released quickly once they're in hand, or whether they sit even longer than they need to. That's the part worth watching, not the wait itself. What happens the moment the wait ends. So when do we actually get answers? Attorney Ben Crump has given the clearest timeline anyone's offered so far, and it's tied directly to something happening in 3 days. Nolan's funeral is Monday, July 20th at Centerpoint Church in Ocean Springs. According to Crump, the family's legal team will likely share preliminary autopsy findings after that service, not before. Here's why that makes sense. This family has spent 2 weeks fighting to be heard, fighting to keep their son's name out of speculation long enough to actually bury him in peace. Releasing painful medical findings days before the funeral means grieving and public scrutiny hit at the exact same moment. Waiting gives them one clean window without that collision. So here's the realistic expectation, based on what's actually been said, not what anyone's guessing. Don't expect results this week. The funeral comes first. What follows is preliminary findings, which means even then it may not be the full picture right away. Toxicology confirmation, further review, and the grand jury process could still stretch this out. But Monday is the marker. That's the moment this shifts from "we're still waiting" to "we're finally starting to know." That's the timeline everyone's been asking about. But there's a second question flooding the comments just as hard, and it's not about the autopsy at all. It's about money. $82,000. That's what the Mississippi Coast Coliseum quoted this family to hold Nolan's funeral there. And they didn't have to pay it because of who's actually funding this case behind the scenes. There are 2 separate funding threads here, and it's easy to mix them up. First, the independent autopsy, not crowdfunded. According to Crump, Colin Kaepernick is personally covering the cost of that second independent medical opinion, the one running outside the state's own findings. Second, the funeral itself. Filmmaker Tyler Perry is covering those costs directly. That's the reason the family could walk away from that $82,000 Coliseum quote entirely and choose a smaller, more personal church instead, without the price tag becoming their problem. Then there's the GoFundMe, the one actually raising money from the public. And here's the detail most people miss. Nolan's mother has said more than once they're not pressuring anyone to give. Her exact words, "If people can donate, it's appreciated, but if not, prayers and support are enough." So here's where that leaves things. The autopsy is covered. The funeral is covered. The GoFundMe exists, but by the family's own request, it's not something they're leaning on the public for. One thing worth knowing if you're thinking about giving anyway, always verify a GoFundMe is linked directly from a verified family or attorney account before donating to any case getting this much attention. Scammers move fast on cases like this one. And speaking of things still moving, the autopsy isn't the only piece of this case that's still wide open. The autopsy isn't the only question still open. Two more pieces of this case are sitting unresolved right now, and one detail just changed the whole picture. First, the grand jury. District Attorney Angel Myers-McThalrath has told the family directly that once the investigation wraps, this case goes in front of a grand jury. That's standard procedure for any unnatural or suspicious death in the county. It doesn't automatically mean anyone's being accused of anything, but that process hasn't started. No timeline yet. Second, Nolan's cell phone. It's been one of the most talked about pieces of this entire case because his family insists he never would have left it behind. What's been agreed to is a mutual inspection, the family's experts and law enforcement's experts reviewing the data together at the same time, nobody waiting to be told secondhand what turns up. Still, nothing scheduled yet. And here's the newer development. The FBI is now formally assisting Jackson County with the investigation, specifically the digital evidence. That's not standard for a case this size. That's a signal. So 3 days out from the funeral, here's where Nolan's family actually stands. Waiting on autopsy results already sitting finished, waiting on a grand jury process that hasn't begun, waiting on a phone that might explain everything, still unopened. A lot has happened, almost none of it has landed yet, and that's the world this family is walking into a funeral inside of. Monday, this family buries their son. Centerpoint Church, Ocean Springs. Visitation 9 to 11, the service right after, Reverend Al Sharpton officiating, and afterward, not a traditional repast, a celebration of life at the Jackson County Fairgrounds, because, in her mother's own words, Nolan wouldn't have wanted anyone sitting around crying. He'd have wanted a party. Former teammates are coming, middle school, high school, even players from teams he used to play against. His coach has already been in contact to make sure they're there. And through all of it, Christine Wansley has asked for one thing publicly more than once, that if anyone shows up to protest or demonstrate, they keep it peaceful. Nolan, she said, would never have wanted violence connected to his name. This is the moment the autopsy timeline is actually built around, not bureaucracy for its own sake, a mother trying to bury her son without a medical report landing in the middle of it. So Monday isn't just a funeral, it's the hinge this entire case turns on. Everything before it is the wait, and everything after it is when we finally start getting real answers. So here's where this actually stands. Both autopsies done, results held until after Monday. A grand jury coming, no timeline yet. A phone inspection agreed to, still unscheduled. The FBI now in the mix. And a family, 3 days out, just trying to bury their son with some peace before any of it gets released. That's not a satisfying place to end a video. It's the honest one. If you want to know the moment those results actually drop, subscribe now, because when they do, we'll have it here first, broken down clearly, no speculation, no guessing. And if you were on Horn Island, or you have real information about what happened that day, not a rumor, not a screenshot, the tip line is linked below, not the comments. This family has had enough noise. Thank you for watching. We'll see you the moment there's something real to report.